Hello guys, so welcome back in the first lecture of the last section, which is object-oriented programming. Okay, so in this section we will get to know what is this object-oriented programming, which we also call OOPS. Okay, so what is this and how we work with objects, real life objects, when we talk about programming. Okay, when we talk about object-oriented programming, okay, we deal with the real life objects. Okay, so simply we'll get to know, or we'll talk about classes and objects. Okay, and objects in C++. Okay, within this lecture. So uh, let's get started. So first thing that we're going to talk about is what are classes. Okay, so classes are particularly, they help us in creating a user defined data type. We have talked earlier about the predefined data types, right? So these are the predefined data types that we talked about. Okay, predefined data types. Okay, I told you some, whereas there are others as well. So you can read documentations for that. Okay, they are very simple to understand. Okay, so I told you about int. I told you about string. I told you about let's say I told you about float. I told you about boolean. Okay, and I told you about character, right? So these are the predefined data types. Their definition is already set. Okay, so int is used to store integer values. String is used to store a set of character, which we also call string. Float is used to store decimal values like 10.56 or 7.93, something like that. Bool is used to store true and false value. Okay, and char, or which we also call character, is used to store character values like a, or like capital A, something like that. Okay, but if you want to store some different kind of data, let's say you want to store a date. Okay, date, then you want a different data type, right? Because date is written this way. Then uh, you know then it has the date, the current day, then it has the current month. Okay, month, let's say third month is there. Okay, so what this represents, this represents March, right? January, February and March. And then the year, let's say 2025. Okay, so this represents the year, right? It has three sections, so we cannot represent it by any of these predefined data types. Okay, so we'll have to create our own data type. So in this purpose, okay, for this purpose we use classes. Okay, so what we can do, how do we create uh, you know a different data type? Okay, so we call it user defined data type. User defined data type, why we call it user defined data type? Okay, user defined data type. Okay, so why do we call it a user defined data type? Because these data types are created by the user as per their needs. Okay, right now I needed to create a data type which can store a date, right? So I'll create a data type of my own. Okay, to store the date. Okay, so to store the date, I'll create my own data type. Let's say, let's get back. Okay, so how do I create my own data type using classes? Okay, so how do we create classes? Okay, so the syntax would be something like that. Okay, something like this, sorry, something like this. So I'll write class here. Okay, then I will, okay, so the syntax would be something like this. We'll write class. Okay, then we'll write the name of the class name. Okay, class name, then the scope or the body starts of the class. Okay, so inside this we'll write an access specifier. Okay, access specifier to specify uh, what type of access we want of the data. Now there will be some data members. Okay, data members. Okay, and there will be some member functions. Okay, yeah. So and then the class ends, and we'll end it with semicolon as well. Okay, so yeah, this is the structure of a class. Okay, Now let's talk about the access specifiers. Okay, so yeah, so so yeah, so this is the structure. Okay, now let's see uh, what are the access specifiers. Okay, so let me scroll it a little bit. So what are the access specifiers? Okay, access. Okay, sorry. So access specifiers. Okay, so access specifiers or modifiers. They help us decide whether the data members or the member functions that are within it are accessible within the whole program or within the class itself. Yeah, so this is the purpose of access specifiers. Okay, now let's see what I'm talking about. So there are three types of access specifiers. First one is the public. Okay, the second one is private, and the third one is protected. Okay, protected. So the private and protected are somewhat similar. Okay, they are somewhat similar. uh, for the case that they do not allow the access of data members or member functions within them outside the class. Now what I'm talking about is, let's say we first create a program and an object. Okay, so now let's talk about the object first. Okay, because that is more important. Okay, so yeah, so what is an object? Okay, an object could be anything which we see in the real life. Let's say the object is a chair. Okay, so the object is a table. Okay, the object is a human. Okay, a human. The object could be uh, you know a laptop. Okay, a laptop, or simply laptop. Okay, so laptop could be an object as well. So these objects can be represented in the form of programming, where the data members, okay, where the data members uh, you know they represent their state. Okay, state I mean that the chair is going to have at least four pillars on which it stands, right? We don't call it pillar, actually, four support. Okay, you can call it four supports. Okay, then the state could be that it is, let's say, it has a four support, it has a backrest. Okay, backrest. Okay, something like that. So these could be properties. Okay, backrest could be. Okay, now these properties, okay, they can be represented by some data type. Okay, let's say the four pillars, the pillars are four, right, in number, or there are four supports, so this could be int support. Okay, so int supports. Okay, and we can store four value inside it. And then similarly, this backrest, either it is present or it is not. So this could be bool uh, backrest. Okay, so if the value is yes, okay, if the value is true, that means the backrest is present, and if the value is false, then that means that the backrest is not present. Okay, similarly in the case of human, you can, data members of human will be its state. Okay, so human has 2 feet. Okay, human has an age. Okay, it has a gender. Okay, gender. uh, yeah, so these are the data members. Data members are simply the state. Okay, the state of an object represents the data members. Okay, now let's get back to another page. So when we talk about an object, we talk about its state, and we talk about what it does. Okay, what it does actually, it does. Okay, so state represents data members, right? We already discussed about it, data members. So what it does, there will be some functions that it can perform, right? Functions. So uh, this represent member functions. Okay, member functions represent the functions that the object can perform. Let's say we take the example of a human. So human can walk. This could be a member function. Then can jump. Okay, this could be a human function, sorry, member function. And can speak, this could be a member function as well. Okay, so yeah, these are the member functions. And data members, what are the data members? It's a state, like what are its properties? Let's say human. We talk about human. We talk about his gender. Okay, sorry. We talk about the gender of the human. We talk about the age of the human. Okay, we talk about the number of. We talk about, let's say, yeah. So there could be more, properties. I'm not getting right now. Okay, so yeah, you this way you can, simply uh, find the data members and data member functions of a particular class, let's say human. Okay, let me take you to the Visual Studio Code now, and let's try to create an object, okay, using class. Okay, but we talk about object oriented programming here, but simply the purpose of class is to create a user defined data type. Okay, let's first create a user defined data type. Okay, data type which is going to store which is going to store uh, which is going to store date. Okay, which is going to store date, a data of type date. Okay, date has three properties, like it has a day. Okay, it has a month, and it has a year. Okay, all of which are integers only. This day is also an integer, month is also an integer, and year is also an integer. If you want to represent month in the form of the string, let's say you want to represent like this, May, instead of writing 5, because May is fifth month, right, of a year. So yeah, if you want to represent like this, you'll have to declare month as a string. Okay, string. Let me tell you how we create our own data type now. Let's get back to the Visual Studio Code. So let's say, oops, okay, 1.cpp we name it. Okay, now here let's say let me write the boilerplate code first. Okay, so sorry, so let's not write the boilerplate code, let's write the purpose. So purpose of the program is to create a user defined data type. Okay, data type which is date, obviously. Okay, which has three sections. It has three sections. First one is day. Okay, second one is month, and the third one is year. Okay, now let's say you know we try to create the class. Okay, first we'll write the boilerplate code. Okay, okay, okay. Now we'll write the okay first boilerplate code only. Yeah, so now we'll create the class in between these two. Okay, here in this section we'll create the class. So let's say we try to create the class now. Class, then the name of the class. I have already told you that syntax would be first the class and then the class name. So let's say the class name is date, because we are trying to create an object as a user defined data type date, right? So now let's see. Okay, so now we will give it access modifier as public. Okay, because we want the data members to be accessible everywhere in the function. Okay, and we'll end it with semicolon as well, so that it doesn't give error. Okay, now within this access modifier we will give the data member and data functions which we want to access. So a date will have three things, right? It has a day. So let's suppose we denote the day by int. Okay, because it will be an integer value, right? Let's suppose we want month in the form of a string and not in the form of a integer only. So string month. Okay, and then finally we denote the year with the integer as well. Okay, so okay, int year. Okay, now we got to know all of this. Okay, so now we have declared all three things: the day, the month, and the year. Okay, so how do we how do we work with this? So to work with the object, to work with the class, okay, that we have created, okay, what we have to do is we have to create an object of that class in the main function. Okay, now how do I create an object? So let's suppose I create the object this way. Okay, so what do I do? I write the name of the class. Okay, and the cases should be same. Okay, if there is a small case here, then there should be small case here as well. Okay, the class name should be same. Okay, date, then I give the name to an object. Let's say I name it object only, object. Okay, now I can access all the three data members. Okay, these data member, because they are public. Okay, they are not private or protected, so I can access them anywhere outside the class as well. This is outside the class only, right? Class is only this particular thing. Okay, this is the class. But since I'm working in the main function, so this is outside the class. This will be considered outside the class. But I can access these uh, data members outside the class as well if the access modifier is public. Okay, this is the use of this access modifier. Now let's try to access them. So to access them, I'll use the dot operator. Okay, data member access operator. Okay, which is also called dot operator. So dot operator. Okay, dot operator is used to access. Let's suppose I've created an object named object only, right? I've created a data, sorry, I've created an object named object only. Let's say I create an object which has a different name than this. Okay, this is creating a confusion. So let's say I named it, I created an object of that class. Let's say D I create. Okay, now to access the data members, I'll write D, then I'll write this dot operator. Okay, and then I'll give any of the three data member. So let's say I want to assign value to day. So D dot day I'll write, and then simply I will assign it a value using the assignment operator, and then I'll give it some integer value. We have only at max 30 days, right? 30 days in a month, and you'll have to check how many days a month have. Okay, before assigning it a value, you should know that. So let's say I take, since Fab goes 29, so let's say I give it a value 12. Okay, so the day is 12. Now D, to access the another data member which is month, D dot month I'll say. Okay, so month was a string, right? In my definition, class definition, so I'll give it a string value only. So let's say I take the month February, so I'll give it the value February. Okay, I don't know if the spelling is right or wrong. You correct it yourself. Then I'll give it the year. Okay, let's say the year is 2025, so I give it a year 2025, and since it is an integer, it is not enclosed within any of the quotes or single quotes or double quotes. Yeah, so this is how we assign values to all three things. Now if you want to print them as we print the date, right? So how we can print them? We'll write day first, then I give it a dash in between. Okay, then I'll print the, okay, I forgot to write it here, d dot day. Okay, not only day. Okay, so because D is the object of the class, and then to access its month, we'll have to give dot operator, and then we'll have to write month. Okay, month, then again we give it this symbol here, and then D dot year. Okay, now you can even use endl, and you can even skip it, because we are not having any particular statement after that. So what this is going to print? This is going to print 12 dash February. Okay, dash 2025. Let's see if we are doing it correctly or not. Okay, let's get back to the Visual Studio Code. We have created an object. Okay, let's create it D only. Okay, so to access the, okay, yeah, so if you use dot operator, you can access any of these three. I'm choosing day first. You can choose any. Okay, it doesn't matter, the order doesn't matter. So 12. Okay, let's say I give it a month. Since month is a string, right? Month is a string here. Okay, as you can see, so month is a string here. So we'll assign a string value to month. So February. Okay, and okay, I got it wrong. Yeah, so to access the year, d dot year. Okay, and we'll give it a value, let's say 2025. Okay, now to print this, d dot day, then I'll give it a space, a symbol in between, then d dot month. Okay, okay, it is not dot operator actually. Okay, okay, then finally d dot year. Okay, and then we'll end it. Okay, so now if we try to print this, let's see the output. Yeah, so we get the output this way. Okay, so yeah, this is all about how to create an object using class. Okay, now we can also do one thing. We can store integer inside it only, and we can assign it an integer value here. When we assign the value to the data member of the object, we'll give it a value. Let's say for February, it is second month, so we'll give it 2. Okay, Now let's see what is the output. Instead of February, we'll get 2. Yeah. So yeah, this was it for this lecture. Okay. I told you about the object and okay. So I forgot to tell you one thing. What are the access modifiers? Okay. So let's get back to the next page. Okay. So access modifiers. Okay, modifiers. So what are the access modifiers? Okay. So public, I already told you about how the public works. Okay. If all the data members of an object are public, then we can access them anywhere. Okay, outside the class. Okay, the class. Okay, anywhere outside the class or anywhere within the program. Okay, anywhere within the program. Okay, within the program. But now the second example, the second case would be private. Okay, and by default, if we do not give any access modifier, the access modifier already assumes it to be private. Okay, so let me tell you what I'm trying to say right now. So if I don't give access modifier here, so it will assume all the data members to be private and not public, so we cannot access them outside the class, right? All these are giving errors to me, right? So this is because they are assumed to be private in the default case. Okay, so I'll have to give them public access modifier. Okay, so that I can access them outside the class as well. Yeah, so now there are no errors. This is because I have already defined them as public. Okay, now let's talk about private access modifier. So according to private access modifier, we cannot access the data members and the member functions uh, outside the class. Okay, we cannot access them outside the class. Okay, so to access them, to access them outside the class, we have to use getters and setter function. Okay, these functions are very important in case of private access modifier. Now let me tell you what are member functions first, and then I'll take you to these getters and setters. Okay, so let's get back to the screen. Okay, so let's talk about member functions now. Let's create another class, another object. Okay, where we can talk about data members. Okay, so sorry, member function. Let's create a class human. Okay, human, and let's say we end it. Okay, we give it an access modifier private first. Okay, private. Let's say we don't we give the name as employee. Okay, employee. Okay, so now within the private, let's say we put the salary of the employee. Okay, and now we want other data members to be public, right? So let's say employee id. Okay, employee id. Okay, there shouldn't be space in between the name, right? I already told you that. And let's say uh, employee name would be a string, right? Yeah, so yeah, uh, you can name this variable as employee name also. Okay, but since it is lengthy, so yeah, so yeah, this way also you can name it. Now you want you want to access this salary. Okay, but let's see whether we can access them or not, whether we can access the salary or not. Okay, so when we try to access the salary, okay, let's create the object. Okay, to create the object of this particular class, we'll have to name the class first, employee. Okay, and then we give the name of the object. Let's say I give it e. Okay, so I have created an object of class of employee class. Okay, so now to access the data members, I write dot operator, e and dot. Okay, so I can access only employee id and employee name. Okay, which are under public access modifier. I cannot access this salary. Okay, so how do I access this salary? So there is a concept of getter and setter function now. Okay, now how do we use getter and setter function? So this you have to listen to me very carefully now. Okay, so how do we create getter and setter functions? So what do I do? Okay, so what I'll do is that, okay, now, so within the private we had our salary, right? Int salary. Okay, so now within the public I had two data members, right? First one is the employee id, and second one that I was having is string employee name, right? Employee name. Okay. Yeah. So now if I want to access this salary, okay, what I'll do, I'll create getter and setter function, and you must remember this, that the getter and setter function should be created under the public class only. Okay, since it can be, private data members can be accessed anywhere in the class, so we can access them within the public modifier as well. Okay, so public modifier, within the public modifier will create the getter and setter function. I already told you how to create functions, so let's create getter and setter function. So getter is a function to, setter is the function to set the value of the salary, and getter is the function to get the value. Okay, so first we will create setter. Okay, since setter is only setting the value and not returning anything, we will create its type. We'll have the type of the setter as void. Okay, void set. What we want to set? We want to set salary, so we'll underscore and we'll put salary here. You no need to, the naming, I'm doing the naming of the setter function as per as per the situation. I want to set the salary, right? So I'm setting the to set the salary, I'm naming it set salary. You can name it anything, okay, but you must remember that it is for the purpose of setting salary. So set salary, I'll give it a value. Okay, I have passed the parameter to a function, right? Int value. Okay, so here I'll give it some integer value, since this is an integer, right? Salary is an integer, and to assign it some value, the value should be integer as well. Okay, so what I'll do inside this function is salary equals to this value. Okay, so what I've done is that I have assigned value, the value that we passed in the setter function, to this salary, data member. And now to get the value, we'll use getter function. So getter function will return a value of type integer, right? Since salary is an integer, so it has the data type as integer. Okay, int get underscore salary. Okay, so it has no parameters passed. Okay, because we are not assigning any value into it. We are just returning the value of salary. So what we do, we use return statement, because we are returning something, right? We are returning a data of type int. Return salary. Okay, yeah, so both these functions should be within the public access modifier only. Yeah, so this is how we create the getter and setter function, and I'll tell you the use of it within the program itself. Okay, so let's get back to the Visual Studio Code. Now let's try to create getter and setter function. So to create setter function, we'll use void set underscore salary. Okay, we'll pass some value to it, and then we'll put the salary equals to this value. Okay, yeah, so to get this value now, since it is going to return integer value, right? Salary is an integer. Okay, int get underscore salary. Okay, salary. Okay, we won't pass any parameter, and we'll return salary here. Okay, we have to, we have to be careful, because all the cases of this salary should be same as this one. Okay, there shouldn't be difference, the uppercase and lowercase, you have to remember that there shouldn't be any difference in the naming. Okay, now how do we use these getter and setter functions? To use them, now what we can do, e dot, now we can use these functions as well, since they are within the public access modifier, right? Within the public access modifier. So to get the salary, we must first set the salary. Okay, let's say we first set the employee id. Okay, so to set the employee id, let's say the id is it is an integer, right? So let's say the id is 5. Okay, or let's say the id is 2014. Okay, so it is the 2014th member of that particular company. E dot, let's say the employee name is my particular name. Okay, let's say not my name, let's say the name is John. Okay, John. Okay, let's say John Wick. Okay, yeah. Oh, okay, let's say now we want to access its salary. Okay, so to get the salary, we must set the salary first. So e dot will set the salary first. Okay, not we won't get the salary if we directly use get salary. Okay, if we try to print this. Okay, and since it is a function, I'll use like this. Okay, yeah, so if we try to print this, let's see what is the output. Okay, so the output is some garbage value. Okay, this is some garbage value. So what happens is, when we statically allocate the memory, Okay, this is called static allocation. Okay, so when we statically allocate the memory, so we get the value as some garbage value. Okay, so we have got some garbage value here. Now we won't work this way. So what we'll do first we'll try to set the salary. So e dot set salary. Okay, set salary, and we have to give some parameter, right, since we have defined it as having a parameter also. So let's say the salary is 50,000. Okay, 50,000. I'm giving it an integer. Okay, yeah, so I've called the function and I've set the salary as 50,000. Now if I try to get the salary, let's say I directly print it, e dot get salary. Okay, so I'll get the salary as 50,000. Let's see. Okay, let's clear the terminal. Let's run. Yeah, so I'm getting the salary as 50,000 because I've set the salary as 50,000. So if I would set the salary as 10,000, if I would have set the salary as 10,000, so I would receive 10,000 as the salary. Yeah, so this is how the getters and setter functions work. So getters and setter functions are similar to the data members. Okay, let's suppose let's suppose we create another class. Okay, so you got the idea about the getters and setters functions are a type of member functions only. Okay, so instead of these functions, let's say we create another member function. Let's say uh, void can code. Okay, this function uh, checks whether employee can code or not. Okay, so let us define a condition where employee can code. Okay, so let's say if the salary, if the salary of the employee, okay, is greater, let's say uh, okay, let's give another condition because salary is a private member, right? Salary is a private member. Let's say if the employee ID, if the employee ID is greater than 2000 and 2000, so let's say he can code. Okay, this is employee ID. Okay, employee ID. Okay, let's say if the employee ID is greater than 2000, he can code. Can code. Let's say otherwise he can't. Okay, else he can't. Let's say how we create. Let's see how we create this data, this member function. Okay, so to create this member function, what we can do, void can code. We are writing the definition of this member function within the public modifier also, within the public modifier only. Okay, so let's say can code. Let's say we use the if statement here. If the employee ID is greater than 2000. Okay, okay, so let's say he can code in that case. Okay, so he can code. Okay, otherwise he can. Okay, let's say it is less than 2000 or equal to 2000, he can code, can't code. Okay, so else he can code. Okay, he yeah, he can't code. Okay, yeah, so okay, let's try to access this member function now. So we have set the employee ID as 2014. Okay, so since the employee ID is greater than 2014, he can code. Okay, so let's comment this out. Let's only try to print one single C out. E dot now can code. Okay, can code, and since it is a function and having no parameters, so I'll write it this way. Okay, so what is the error? Let's try to see what is the error. So yeah, this doesn't matter. Okay, so since it is a function and it is a type void, okay, e dot can code. Okay, I have to do this way. I'm calling the function now. Let's see what we get. So he can code. Why? This is because the employee ID is greater than 2000. Okay, now let's set the employee ID less than 2000. Let's say 1999, or let's say 2000 only. So even if it is equal to 2000, he can't code. Okay, because the condition is only if it is greater than 2000. Let's see what we get as the output. So we get he can't code. Okay, yeah, so this was all about member functions and getters and setters in C++. Okay, now let's talk about the constructors. So constructors are very important, and we must know a constructor before we get to know about the getter and setter. So I already forgot to tell you that. So let's get into constructors and destructors. Okay, constructors and destructors. Okay, we'll talk about destructors later. Okay, we'll talk about constructor in this case. Okay, so what happens is whenever we try to create an object in the main function, let's say we try to create an employee object, right? This way. Okay, so a constructor is called whenever an object is created. Okay, we must keep this as a note. So the note is a constructor is called every time uh, when an object is created. Okay, this is called every time. Okay, now let's check how it is called. Okay, so we haven't created constructor before. Okay, so to create the constructor, the syntax of the constructor would be something like this. So what is syntax? Okay, we give the name of the class only. Let's say we created employee class, right? Class employee. Okay, this way we created the class, right? We gave some data members, public modifiers and all. So we'll give the class name, so employee. Okay, then we'll give parenthesis. Inside parenthesis we can pass parameters as well, but since I'm not passing a parameter, I'm just checking whether a constructor is called or not. So let's say we give some statement here to print. Okay, I am printing a I am being called, let's say. Okay, I am being called to check if constructor is called or not when we create an object. Okay, I am being called. Okay, let's say we try to print this. Okay, to know if the constructor is being called or not. Okay, let's check this in the Visual Studio. Okay, so let's say we try to create a constructor. Okay, we have to create the constructor within the public modifier only. So let's say we create a constructor. So to create the constructor, we must give the name of the class employee. Okay, then parenthesis and then this. Okay, so yeah, this is how the okay. What is the problem? Okay, so the class had capital E. Okay, yeah, so now it is fine. So see out, I am being called. Okay, so we have declared the constructor. Let's see if this is called or not. Okay, so okay, let's comment this out. Let's really remove this all of this thing, and let's see if the constructor is being called or not. We have only created an object. Okay, so this defines this the object is created. Okay, let's see if the function is called or not. If the function will get called, if the constructor is called, then this must print this statement, right? I'm being called. Let's see. So if we try to run it, yeah, so I am being called is printed on the screen. That means upon creating an object, okay, we are creating an object here. Only upon creating an object, the constructor is called. Okay, now let's say we give it some parameter. Okay, we give it some parameter. Okay, the same as we used to do in the functions. Okay, let's say we give it some parameter. So let's say int id we pass here. Okay, which will be set as employee id, which will you know which will be assigned to employee id. And let's say we pass a name as well. So name is a string, so string capital name, let's say. So that no, okay, name is fine. So let's say we assign employee id to id only. Okay, and let's say we assign the employee name equals to name. Okay, equals to name that we are passing in the parameter. Okay, let's try to create an object. Okay, now the constructor cannot be called and it gives error. So why it gives error? Because no default constructor exists for the class employee. Okay, so now to use the parameterized constructor where we have passed the parameter, we have to give the parameters to it. So let's say the id is 1999 and let's say the name is uh, Albert. Okay, Albert Einstein. Okay, let's see if the constructor is being called or not. So again this implies that the parameterized constructor is being called, since we have passed the parameter as well and we have set the definition of the constructor to be like this, to be taking the two parameters. Okay, So yeah, now if we want to check something, let's check the name. Okay, let's check the name because we are assigning the name as well, right? So e dot, let's say we try to check the name, employee name. Okay, so we must get, okay, if we try to print this, okay, okay, what is the error? What is the error? Let's check. Call of an object of a class type without appropriate operator or conversion function and pointer to indicate type. So let's see what is the error. Let's see how we can fix it. Okay. Okay. Employee name is not a function. Okay. Yeah. So now it is fine. So yeah, let's end it. Okay. Let's try to check. Okay. First we'll get, I'm being called for the object being created, and then we'll get the employee name. Okay. Employee name should be Albert Einstein because we have passed Albert Einstein as the name in the constructor function. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. So in the first line we get I'm being called, and in the second line we get Albert Einstein. So if we try to print the ID as well, uh, e.id, employee ID. So let's see what we get. We must get the value 1999 because we have passed that in the constructor. Yeah, so we are getting 1999. So yeah, this is all about constructors, getters and setter functions, access modifiers, and classes and objects. So I told you about the private and public access modifier. Let's get back to the last access modifier, uh, which is let's see. The last access modifier is protected access modifier. Okay, protected access modifier. Okay. Okay, they are also similar to the private access modifier. Okay, private access modifiers. The only difference is that in private access modifiers we can simply use the getter and setter functions within the public access modifier, and we can get in the class itself, and we can get the value of the data members inside the private access modifier. Okay, but in the case of protected access modifier, what we do, let's suppose we have kept the inside the protected access modifier we have kept the salary. Okay, so what we'll have to do, we'll have to create another class, okay, to access uh, the members inside the protected class. So to access this salary, we'll have to create another class which is a derived class. Now what is a derived class? A derived class simply uses inheritance. Okay, inheritance, which is a pillar of object oriented programming. Inheritance means a class is inheriting some properties of the other class. Let's say human is a broad class, right? Human contains both men and women. Okay, now I created a class, let's say I created a women class. Okay, women class. So women class may have some properties similar to human class, right? Women can walk, women can talk, women can speak. So these the member functions are same in both women and human class, and the gender must be different, but the age could be similar as the data member. Okay, so yeah, there are some properties which both the classes with which both the objects have. Okay, even women have age, and even human, which is a superset of men and women, okay, have the property called age. Okay, so to create a derived class or child class, we call it. Okay, child class. So women is a child class of human because women is a subset of human. So to create a child class, what do we do? How do we create this? Okay, so to create this child class, what we'll do is that we'll write the name of the parent class. So class, okay, uh, sorry, not the parent class, we'll name the child class women. Okay, we have to create the child class as women class, right? Now to inherit, we'll give public access modifier. Okay, and then we'll give the name of the parent class. So parent class will be human, right? Human. Okay, then we will work with the class. You can write, you can give some access modifier inside, and you can give some other properties that you want to that you want different in case of women. Okay, so yeah, this is how we create a child class. Okay, this child class is also called, this is also called child class, this women class, okay, this women class also called as child class or derived class, or it is also called as friend class, okay, friend class. Okay, now how do we, access the data member inside the protected class? Okay, so we'll create a, okay, so the steps, okay, steps. Okay, first we will create, we create a friend class or child class or derived class, okay, whatever we call it. Second, we create getter and setter function, getter and setter functions under access, under public access modifier, under public access modifier in the child class, in the child class or friend class or derived class. Okay, now we simply use the access modifier. Okay, simply use, simply use sorry, not the access modifier, getter and setters to get the value, getters and setters. Okay, now let's check, okay, if we can try to, if we are able to access the values. Now let's, okay, so now let's get back to the Visual Studio Code and let's see how we work with protected class. Okay, so to work with protected class, let's create another program. Okay, so yeah, so let's write the program. Okay, so let's say we create a program. Let's write the boilerplate code first. Okay, IOStream. Okay, using namespace standard. Okay, and let's say in main void. Okay, now let's create a class. Okay, let's say we create a class named women. Okay, women. Okay, let's say we give it public access modifier. Okay, public. Okay, let's say uh what's wrong? Okay, yeah, so we haven't, yeah, so public must be this way, right? So now let's say we keep in protected, protected, uh, sorry, we, the parent class, let's say the parent class or the base class would be uh, let's say human, which has the property protected as uh, int age. Okay, and in public it has the property gender. Okay, gender, gender. Okay, oh, I did something wrong. Yeah, this should be semicolon and this should have some type. Yeah, so now I want to access this this data member, which is age. Okay, this is what I want to access. Okay, so to access any data member within the protected class, I have to create a derived class or base class. Okay, so let's say we create a derived class. Let's say we create the derived, we name the derived class as the child class, child, which is inheriting. So to inherit we use this, okay, column. Okay, then we write public as the access modifier and then we give the name. So we give the name as human because human is the class from where we are inheriting the properties. Okay, now we end it. What's wrong? Let's see. Incomplete type human is not allowed. Okay, so what is wrong with the human class? Incomplete type human. Okay, so why I'm getting this error? So the problem is that I've written a class within another class. So fool. Let's get back. Let's put it outside. Okay, so let's create the class outside. Class, let's say child. Okay, and let's say we give it a, you know let's say it is inheriting from the human class. Okay, So public human. Okay. Now let's say, now we give the access modifier as public. Okay. Now we create, okay, give the semicolon also. So now within this public modifier of the base class or friend class, we create the getter and setter function. Okay. So let's say void will have to create the setter first, set age. Okay, age, and we will have to give some value. Okay, int value, you can name it anything, the parameter I'm naming it value. Okay, so we'll set the age. Okay, yeah, so age has a small. Okay, we have to remember the cases. Okay, yeah, now we'll create a getter function. So age is a, since age is integer, so int get underscore age, and we won't pass any parameter since we are returning the age, right? Return age. Okay, now to access the age, we must create the object of child class and not the parent class. Okay, so let's create the child class object. Child, the class name is child, right? And then object obj. I'm naming it obj this time. You can name it object, or you can name it c also. Okay, so c, let's say we name it c. Now to set the age, c dot set age. Let's say we set the age as 30 or 23. Okay, now to get the age, we simply print c dot get underscore age. Okay, age, yeah. So let's see if we are getting age 23 printed on the screen. Yeah, so 23 gets printed on the screen. So now let's get back to the screen. So only in the case of protected class. Okay, if we have access modifier protected access modifier, okay, then all the data members in the protected access modifier of a class need another class. Okay, which is a child class. Okay, which is a child class which is inheriting from this particular class only. Okay, and inside this child class we'll have to create the getter and setter functions to access the data member of the base class. Okay, base class is the parent class from which this child class is inheriting. Okay, so child, this is child class, let's say, and it is inheriting from parent or base class. So this child class is also called friend class or derived class, and this parent class is also called super class or like the base class. Okay, yeah, so this is how these different access modifiers work. Okay, so these access modifiers, the last point that I want to make is that they help in the abstraction. Okay, so abstraction is another pillar of OOPS. Okay, object oriented programming. So abstraction means data hiding. Okay, data hiding. So they help in hiding the data, right? We cannot access the data member if it is under the private or protected class. We have to do certain things to access it. Okay, so yeah, this is why the access modifiers becomes a very important part of object oriented programming. So this is all about the fundamentals of object oriented programming. Okay, and we have got to know about parameterized constructors. Okay, in which we were passing the parameters. Okay, yeah, parameterized constructors. We have got to know about simple constructor where we were not passing any any parameters, simple constructors. Okay, we got to know about getter and setter functions and what are their purposes. Getter and setter functions. Okay, we got to know about object and classes. Okay, we got to know about how the classes are used to create a user defined data type, right? User defined data type. So these objects can also behave as a user defined data type, right? This was what I was talking about. We created we created an object by the name date, right? So this is a user defined data type. So yeah, this was all about the fundamentals of object oriented programming. In the next lecture we will talk in brief about all the four pillars of object oriented programming, particularly inheritance, then abstraction, okay, then encapsulation, encapsulation, and then lastly we'll talk about polymorphism. Okay, so these are the four pillars of object oriented programming, and they are quite oftenly asked in the interviews. Okay, so you have to remember these things. So yeah, that was it for this lecture. Hope to see you in the next lecture.